I think that in respect of the first two questions, it's quite interesting, I think, to define what the differences are. I mean, I personally don't think, for example, that the desire to elect your government is a kind of Western value. You know, my view is pretty much when people get the chance, it's what they prefer to do. Now, some countries need to evolve to that state because of their development and so on. And, you know, simply, you know, if you've got a country that's under essentially a process of evolutionary development, if you take China, for example, there will be a political evolution that will take time. It's not just going to happen overnight, and that's sensible, actually, in order to keep the stability of the country. But, you know, I think when you analyze, you know, what is the difference in values and what are the difference, you know, to refer to Alex's question, the different governments have about the proper place of religion in the public sphere, I think you can come to certain common rules reasonably quickly, actually, unless what you have is a view that is probably one part of a religious faith's view as to what those proper values are. In other words, let's get specific. If you take the role of women in society or in politics, now you will find there are people who will say, within Islam, for example, that the role of women is secondary to their men, that they don't agree with gender equality and so on and so forth. On the other hand, actually you will find many people that do articulate those values. And there is often a battle going on within the faith about, you know, what the faith means for certain policies. And so I think the thing that we need to explore is the degree to which the values actually are fundamentally different and the degree to which it suits the purpose of certain people, often for political reasons, to say that they are very different. See what I mean? So, in other words, I think that, you know, there are various cultural things that are going to be different. There are various practices that will be different. But actually, when you really look at basic values, do you treat people equally? Should there be just systems of law? Should free speech be allowed, and so on? Actually, what you find is, I think, is that you will get certain countries that will say, well, we are not ready for that process of evolution yet. And that's a thing you can partner, as it were. There's a relationship you can have around that, because they're saying, look, yes, I understand there's a timeline here that we need to follow in our development. But then you get people who are actually intrinsically hostile to those very concepts. And that's a different matter. But I think you find that those that are intrinsically hostile are a much narrower group. And the one thing I don't think we should ever allow is for certain people to define what the values of their civilization or their culture are, when actually they don't necessarily represent the entirety of the views within that faith or culture. So I think what we try and do is we try and achieve as much common space as possible. That's really what I'm saying. And we do that acknowledging that differences will be genuinely cultural, but actually a lot more may be to do with politics, and you will find people from within the same culture who take the same view as we do.